Let's shift to talking about how you got onto the Stanislaus River, because in the early 70s, you had your PhD, you were in the academic world, but you had been a rafter for much of your life. Tell us about how you came to the river and then your involvement with the fight against New Melones Dam.
Yeah. And I'm actually trying to remember what was my first trip down the Stan. And I can remember rapids in the Stan. I can remember learning how to paddle raft on the Stan, though we did more of that on the American. I can remember so many different trips. But it was a place where you could take students, and by 1972 I had a raft of my own, what we called a yampa, and
a good raft, I might say.
It's still up in my carport now. It's got something like 100 patches on it. But it's a good raft, and it's been down the Grand, it's been on the Touch and Shinny a couple of times. But yeah, the Yampa is a good raft, and especially good for paddle rafting because we had that low tail end. And so by 72, I've got a raft of my own, plus I could always borrow rafts from Lou Elliott, and was taking students down the...
Keep going. Okay. We're just taking a quick dog break here.
Right.
The dog is walking by us.
Yes, which we don't particularly want the patty pat pat in the movie either. So, yeah, by 72 I was definitely on the stand. It was a place in my mind. And yet, I'm also still very involved in the fight for the Grand Canyon. I'm very involved in Alaska stuff. I've been a river runner in Alaska already. And yeah, it just...
So when you were there, you got involved with EDF, which had really, through Jerry Merrill especially,
Yeah.
who had done just amazing work in the late 60s and early 70s in prepping the whole issue of the fight against New Melones. How did you get engaged with EDF on the legal battle and the other things that went along with that?
You have to understand that in the early 70s, I was one of the only economists who had any environmental credentials at all, or only environmentalists who had any economic credentials at all. I mean, both were true. And so I was well known to David, and David probably connected me to EDF, or the word flowed through. Somehow Merrill connected with me, and I remember him coming into my office as a graduate student in biology, saying, we're river runners. And together we testified, not together, but in tandem, before the federal district court.
This was what became a prominent case, EDF versus Armstrong.
EDF versus Armstrong, September 1972. I'm testifying on the benefits and costs of New Melones Dam. And the work I was doing then was just very standard. Look through the economics, see if it makes any sense, but look through it as someone who is critical and questioning. And
it's advocacy work.
It was advocacy, but it was also, I still had to maintain my credentials as an economist, especially as a very young economist. And the biggest thing I found was that, benefit cost analysis by federal agencies is full of all kinds of tricks, and I'd already begun to learn those tricks. But the biggest one I found was that there was the New Melones project, and then there was the irrigation project called the East Side Division.
Which would have taken water from various dams along the east side of the California Central Valley.
Correct. And so it was some of the water for the East Side Division was coming from the New Melones. And so in the benefits of New Melones, there's the benefits of the increase of the value of the land in the East Side Division because of water. Land in the desert's not worth very much. Land with water's worth quite a bit. And they took that increase in the value of land or the future earnings of the land and plugged it into New Melones Dam, saying New Melones is contributing this water. So it shows up in their benefit cost analysis. When you look at the benefit cost analysis for the East Side Division, lo and behold, there's the same benefits of the water on the land. And so the same benefits are counted in two projects, which is, you can see how they could get away with that and how they could think that way, but it's not.
And of course, the East Side Division was never built, so all of those benefits were never realized that way.
Yeah, the water went just into the general system anyway. But yeah, you can see how that kind of error could really booster up the benefit cost ratio. There are other little things like what rate of discount do you use, what rate of interest is appropriate. At the time, we were very favorable with high discount rates because that would make the future water benefits low and the current wilderness benefits high. Then there was a little issue of flood control where they looked at 3 dams together and analyzed their flood benefits. The other 2 dams had already been built, New Don Pedro and I can't remember which. And the 3rd dam was given 1/3 of the benefits of the flood control. Well, usually you get a lot of benefits from the first increment, not so much from the second. It's called the law of diminishing marginal returns. And they just did this as an average, which also would boost New Melones to make it look better. Yeah, I wasn't convinced that they would get the recreation benefits they projected just because there were so many new reservoirs being built. You couldn't possibly have that many voters boating, and lo and behold, there weren't that many boats.
And they didn't anticipate that the Stanislaus, which maybe had 10 or 20,000 user days going on at the early 70s, would end up at 80 to 100,000 by the time the water started rising. So,
And so I didn't look at the flip side. I did not estimate the recreation benefits of the whitewater. I was just taking the analysis as they did it.
Right, because it was a suit against their approval of what they were doing with the dam. How did that all, your involvement in that all wrap up?
Well, it turns out our argument before the court was that there's no point in looking at the environmental analysis if the economic analysis is wrong. The whole point is to weigh the economics and the environment together. And if the economic analysis is wrong, then the whole decision's wrong, and the environmental issues are, just they have to be fairly weighed, and this one's got the thumb on the scale.
And this, we have to underscore, this was fairly new thinking, that the economy, the economic nature of something could be used in a critical way against an economic entity, the dam. And that's new ground.
This was the...
And this is only 5 years after Earth Day in 1970.
Correct. This is only 2 years.
2 years after, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very early. The court just shied away from ruling anything on economics. The same argument was made for the damming of the Trinity River in Texas, and the court there deliberately said we couldn't consider it there.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't really been pushed.
And the case, EDF Armstrong, went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Right. As I recall, it went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled in favor of EDF on the nature of it. That gets us into a whole broader thing, but let's wrap that part of it right here and just hold there.